Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, taking out an hour from your schedules in the middle of the week. Before we kick off, I'm going to quickly hand it over to Zia Soni, our chairperson, for the opening remarks, for setting the ground for why we are here today, what digital literacy means for CII and the Indian Women Network. Zia, over to you.
Thank you, Gurleen. Good evening, and thank you all for being with us today. I would like to welcome all of you, our audience who has joined in from far and wide, as well as our esteemed panelist, Ruchi Batra, Chief Design Officer, IBM iX India, and Marina Sverdel, Digital Solutions Leader for Metro Digital, which is the technology arm of Metro Cash and Carry, one of the largest cash and carry chains in the world. Marina has joined us here from Dusseldorf. The theme for this year at IWN at the Delhi chapter is Unleashing the Power of Women, Engage, Enhance, Empower. Digital Dialogues has been designed to activate all three of these pillars for us, and the content today and in future sessions has been curated based on direct feedback from the IWN membership. On behalf of CII-IWN Delhi chapter, I would like to thank all of those who have openly engaged with the vertical leads, allowing us to enhance the dialogues that we have throughout the year. The digital space is changing so quickly, and I think it's really important to keep up with these changes. It is very complicated, and there is a lot of content out there. Digital knowledge is critical in today's world, and this series was curated so that we may learn how to navigate the space in the best possible way. Ruchi and Marina, thank you for taking the time out to speak with us today to help navigate this space more effectively. The discussion today will be moderated by our very own member, Gurleen Sarao, who joined us from Publicis Epsilon, where she heads digital media solutions for India and the Middle East. Gurleen has been instrumental in organizing the digital dialogue session. So thank you, Gurleen, for putting it all together, and over to you.
Thank you, Zia, and thank you for the platform. I think digital is something that we, the three of us, I can speak on behalf of Marina and Ruchi, we breathe day in and day out. But in this 1 hour today, our objective is to demystify it to a large degree, to set a framework for all our future sessions, which allows us to navigate the space with a structure. Right? It's very, very important with all the clutter, with all the noise, with all the content, to know which channel falls, what strategy works for us, what our roadmap should look like, etc. Now, I'm going to quickly share my screen if you guys can see it. Okay. So we're going to do this kickoff a little differently this time around. Instead of having Ruchi and Marina introduce themselves, I have very, very specific questions. We're running a digital dialogue series. We're running a digital literacy series. But we have a chief design officer on our panel today for this first session. And we have a customer experience and marketing automation lead, right? And both come from different backgrounds, different industries. So kicking it off with Ruchi, what is a chief design officer doing in a tech behemoth like IBM?
That's a great question. And honestly, I would challenge this whole notion of digital, right? So digital is always perceived as technology, but I would say digital is not about technology at all, actually. It's about people. And people, if any digital technology is put out there, and if it is not designed for humans, for people to actually use it and get maximum value out of it, then it's of no use. And we have multiple examples. In fact, COVID has shown us this even more, that more and more these technologies have to truly embed themselves in the life of people, make a change, help them drive their needs and their goals. And that's when digital will be successful. So when it comes about people, design becomes more important, because design is all about bringing human-centric change. Design is all about, the way IBM thinks about design is about having an intent behind a human-centered outcome. So we design as a part of the digital work we do here at IBM, we are constantly questioning what is the problem we are solving for. All this cool tech, we look around ourselves, right? We all hear about blockchains and robotics and all the cool tech.
Crypto, metaverse.
Yeah, you can name it, right? So there's a huge list. But the first most critical question is, how will it make a difference on the end user's life?
Got it.
How do we design those experiences so that technology can enable and augment the human potential? And hence the role of design at IBM, and hence my role of kind of orchestrating that promise of design and digital coming together for the organization.
Perfect. That's a good segue into Marina. What are we doing when we're talking about marketing automation? So you customer experience, marketing automation, the technology side of the customer experience story and the human story that Ruchi just spoke about. Tell us about your work with Metro.
Thanks, Ruchi, for building a very nice foundation for me, because it's very easy to pick it up and build up on that. I have been having different roles within Metro, very much typically on the business side. And as my heart is beating for the customer and for digital, I always considered myself being a bridge maker between the customer and digital. So I couldn't have thought of a better partner for me today in the round. And then while I was disrupting the marketing part, making towards the more digital driven mindset, I also realized that within the tech arm of Metro and my team and myself, we're operating globally across 23 markets. There is a big gap that we're building digital solutions that are, however, not connected seamlessly from a customer perspective, which means that every team is and was working on their own backlog. They considered themselves working together. That's why I could not agree more. It's about people. It's about people, it's about process, and technology needs to follow that. And this was exactly the idea that 3 years ago I pitched to our global CIO, and I said, we might be creating great solutions, but if they're not being used, if they're not communicated to our marketeers, if the conversations that we are taking are tech to tech, there will never be any customer or business value. And this was the reason why we created a completely new function based on my half-an-hour pitch to the CIO of customer experience. And I have to say, we failed a lot, because it's about transforming the mindset of the people and less about transforming technology. And I could not agree more that people feel that marketing automation is about technology. But if there is no foundation of a marketing strategy, for whom, why we're doing certain things, technology is useless. And I think over the course of this panel, Gerlin will also drive us towards the why and for whom.
No, so that brings us to the questions. So thank you for that, Marina, because when we started preparing for this, is for everybody. When we started preparing for digital literacy, we did exactly what Marina and Ruchi just talked about. The human angle, the customer angle, and a lot of the questions that we got from you were around building these experiences, but focused specifically on one or more, social media channel, right? So for this first session, what we did was we decided to step back a little from individual channels, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your TikTok, when it was available in the Indian market, your YouTube videos, right? Step back from the content creation side of things and look at 6 overarching questions that every marketer faces. These are universal. Doesn't matter if you are running a large enterprise and marketing for a large enterprise, or you're running a small business as an entrepreneur yourself. So our focus today is going to be looking at the first 3 questions. This is going to set the baseline for what we do for the rest of the year. So Ruchi and Marina both spoke about knowing your customer, knowing your audience. So who are we trying to speak to? The second one that we will cover today is our product, our service as a business owner. How will it help them? And the third one is, what are the best ways to reach this target audience? Now, the frequency of the content, methods, measuring performance, optimizing, like Marina said, that's something that we will cover and dive deeper into in subsequent digital dialogue sessions. But with that, I'll go deeper into the first one, which is, who are my marketing audiences? Who am I talking to? So Ruchi, can I hand it over to you to walk us through this customer journey, simplify a customer journey for us.
Absolutely. And before doing that, right, so I want to just kind of simplify this question even a bit more, right? So you're saying, who is my customer? And it sounds like a very simple question, but trust me, organizations, businesses do struggle to answer that question. We as marketers, we typically look at our customers with a very broad lens. So it's about all the broad strokes and precise strokes. That's how we look at customers. So in any marketing campaign, if you typically usually hear, they will say, okay, if you ask a business, hey, who is the customer? And they'll say, oh, it's a Delhi-based 18 to 32 years female, working female. And it's a usual answer, like that's kind of answer you'll get, a very broad spectrum. Within that broad spectrum, there are multiple slices. So you can imagine, and just for a minute, go back to your own lives and the women the younger women, 18, 20s, and then 30s, right? So all of these are customers, these women have very different needs. They have very different expectations. They have very different behavioral profile. So the way they make decisions is absolutely different. Now, if you are kind of casting a net so wide, then how will you actually get to the customer's hearts? How do you really have a deeper relationship with the customer? So before even getting to the journey, it's important for you to take a step back and reflect on this very interesting question: who is my customer?
Okay.
And typically a lot of research activities go in. The most commonly, I'm sure you all know, is market research, but we typically as designers, we push that a little bit more because market research is still very broad. Like, how do we look at within the market research data that's coming in, what are the unique behaviors, behavioral profile, psychographic profiles, which you want to talk to, who will associate with your brand, with your product, or with your service. So when we look at all this data that comes in from market research, we typically synthesize this into something called personas. And what you see on my screen is these are two buyer personas. The first one is a professional commuter, and it's maybe a lady who commutes every day. And the second one is an online buyer immigrant. So typically you will find these so what are personas, right? So personas are big patterns. So these are basically personification of big patterns of data into one person-like figure so that you can associate and design for that figure. So before even getting to the journey, it's important for you to understand what are your broad personas you're going after. And one is personas, but then which are the top two personas where you'll get maximum value and maximum connect? And you start with that instead of going very wide and doing almost like a one size fits all. How can you be targeted? And I always push businesses in my space to ask, hey, tell me the one customer segment you really want to talk to and you think is the right segment. Like, really,
Ruchi, I'm going to interrupt you here. Before we get deeper into the personas, from a small business owner standpoint, Marina, when you're working with say small restaurant chains, you're working with entrepreneurs, that is a focus for Metro and Metro Digital. Do you see them going through something similar? Do you see them researching their customer base, or is it broad spectrum of, I need to look at women in a particular city?
I think when we look at it, Gerlin, in many cases, it's not even that. So it's more, I need to generate reach. So this is what we hear from them, especially in the hospitality area that was extremely hit in Italy, France, and Spain by COVID. And for our business, it was quite a burden. They either have their recurring customer base, and I'm not even talking in the digital terms, but they're just recurring customers and they talk about them like this. But they do not focus so much on, I want to attract families, or I want to have a full-time working, highly experienced young people who would like to drop to have a drink. You might see it sometimes if you compare countries to countries, in Italy specifically, that bars started to open in the morning offering breakfast for business people. This is where you sense a certain focus on a specific segment, but you only sense it because there is no clearly outspoken focus of those businesses.
Got it. Got it. So just stepping back, let me ask you a very, very basic question. If I'm an interior designer or I'm a jewelry designer, right? I don't have the kind of resources that Ruchi, probably your clients out of IBM would have. How much time should I invest in saying, who is my audience? Let me break them down into 3 or 4 patterns that emerge, personification of a segment, right? How much time should I invest there?
First of all, the common perception is you need a lot of budget and a lot of time. So I would challenge that perception. I think you can absolutely learn about and define your segment in a very lean way. So first of all, you can never do all this research in one go. It's just humanly impossible to figure out all your segments in one go, just not working. So you start with, a small set of customers. These are customers potentially who buy from you, who connect with you, who interact with your brand, possibly on social media or offline, or get in touch. They could be a starting point too. They could be a hypothesis that this is my customer segment. This is the customer segment usually, which is right now connected to me. And they could, in IBM word, we call them sponsor users, right? So they're the people who actually you start a relationship with, right? Now you look at them very closely. So look at them, what are their preferences, their expectations, their attitudes, their behaviors, their context is very unique. So go narrow and look at those to start with. Don't overinvest too much in market research and all those fancy things. Once you start focusing on one segment and run campaigns, track feedback, your segmentation, that one segment you had gets sharper.
Okay.
What happens is while you're making it sharper, you start see traces of other segment as well. And that's where you spot those patterns step by step. It doesn't have to be one big massive exercise. It can start from where you are today.
Okay. So
I would love to add the qualitative perspective also on that, because obviously, Ruchi, you're right. You get a lot of wisdom out of quantitative data, but also one learning from the user experience perspective is that it's better to talk to 5 customers than to not talk to anyone. And after, I think there is some also data-driven decision making towards that after the 5th customer, the insight, the additional added value from the insight that you are getting will not be so much. So it always comes across as, yes, I need to invest time, but apparently if you just have a catalog of a couple of questions, qualitative research would already give you the first insight. And then agree, Ruchi, you sharpen, and then the quantitative data will confirm or not confirm your observations.
Got it. So have conversations, look at your existing customers, people who are already buying from your business. Start with those customers, and these can be just, in basic conversations, interviews, open-ended questions that help you understand what are their goals, what are their needs, what are their pain points, expectations, and therefore where do you fit into their lives, right?
Absolutely. And also be a little curious, right? You're all business owners here, and be curious about your customers' lives. So don't ask them questions again. I was saying about, hey, what products do you like? That's fine. You can get there, those questions, but start with, hey, what do you do and how day in a life looks like for you? And when day in a life looks like this for you, then you can start understanding where your solutions are going to fit in. So always start with if you're doing qualitative sessions and conversations, start with a broader conversation and establish trust and truly be curious about your customer's life. The more curious you are and more open you are, you will start seeing very interesting patterns and interesting insights, which can actually inform your decision making, which inform your product planning, how your pricing should be, where should you place your products. All those things will start to come in with very, very simple yet curiosity-led conversations. Yeah.
Got it. I'm going to pick up on that last statement that you made, which is a day in the life of, and take us back to this term that if you Google customer journeys, you will find millions of images with different sample journeys, and you'll find different personas. But I think what we did for this one was we took bites. I think in 2020, We all know bikes were sold out everywhere. So you've got a sample journey in front of you with a multitude of channels, right? So Maria, let me put this one to you, which is that I've done my qualitative interviews. I've spoken to 5 or 6 customers or 10 customers, and I'm seeing a pattern emerge. I'm seeing a few channels where they're likely to be found, likely to spend most of their time. So how do I build that out into that day in the life of persona A, persona B? What does it mean for me as a business? Why will it even help me to build out this customer journey?
I think this is extremely important. I think apart from the customer journey, if you Google the word customer centricity, you would also get billions of results, and you would see the trend over time, how this has been increasing, and this has become the buzzword. What it truly means to me, and this is what I mean when I talk about walking in customer shoes, what does it actually mean to walk in customer shoes? How much you are able to empathize with the customers. I'll give you a couple of examples from our business, how we were trying to see, are there, for example, any patterns across countries when it comes to the hospitality area, when it comes to the business owners of shops around the corner, who obviously also buy from Metro, so the reselling part of our business. Because every different market across the globe, and also considering China, for example, as another market, they were claiming that customers have different needs, that customers have different expectations. But I'll tell you that in the end, they all had common driving motivators towards running their business. And I'm pretty sure that if we ask in the room with entrepreneurs in this room, we would also get a similar set of motivations: leaving a legacy, being entrepreneurial spirit, being independent. These are all the motivations that are important to understand to walk in the shoes of the customer. So when I interviewed personally a person running a restaurant in Spain and a restaurant and a bar owner in Italy, the patterns of their lives looked very similar. They also have to drive their kids to school. They also need to wait for them when they're playing football. And in that time, when you have these qualitative conversations, you also understand this is when they're checking Insta. This is when they're doing some things because they have the waiting time. And I'm pretty sure for every business that is being run here, of all the participants in the room, you would be able to define relevant timings where you can become relevant in their lives.
Perfect. So understanding when they're spending time on those social media channels, exactly what kind of content are they engaging with at that point, right? And this would be trial and error. This would be sort of learning as you go, starting with different kinds of content and then building, connecting that to the personas that we spoke about earlier, right? How would that process happen?
Yeah, I think just to add, I think experimentation. So customer experience is more art and science both, right? We always say it's something art about and there's something science about. It's very scientific, it's data-driven, but you know what? There is some bit of creativity in art, right? So run low-cost experiments. You don't have to build big websites or fancy digital properties to test your hypothesis that, hey, this messaging for my brand or this moment is working for my customer. You can run a very small single landing page, basic tests and experiments to get traction. And once you start seeing traction and early attributes of customers starting to kind of engage with you, that's when you know in the right direction. So you can make very, very small experiments and keep on testing. Again, the more you test, the more you learn. And trust me, so one was the customer research we spoke about in the beginning, but these experiments, they're actually adding to your understanding of your customers as you go deeper and sharper with these experiments as well.
Got it. So let's take an example here, and both of you can chime in with your experience. So we've got a lot of apparel designers, we've got a lot of retailers in the audience today who are running their businesses out of the National Capital Region, out of Delhi, right? Now, for traditional Indian wear, for example, if I've got a catalog of my products, my designs, how do I tweak that? How do I decide this is the content that will go on Instagram. This is the nature. These are the calls to action. Is that, how does that map back again to the journey and to the persona?
So if one of the examples, and Marina, please keep me honest. So if one of the examples I can start with is, if it's Indian apparel, right? So if one of the personas is a person who likes to learn about the stories behind the fabric. So okay, how did you create this? Who designed it for me? Where did the fabric come from? Is it coming from a responsible source? Is it actually done by all the artisans in India? So, there are people, there is a segment which I was studying for a client where people, they like to tell stories of what they're wearing. That's a sense of pride. That sense of, saying that, yes, this is what I value. So people demonstrate values with the things they possess, right? So if that's one segment and what's one behavior you're going after, then your campaign will be about stories, about artisans' lives. It will be about the fabric and the weave and the beauty of the piece which you are, the whole apparel which you're actually putting out there for them.
So that's very interesting. So what you're saying is it need not just be the product image. It can be more. It can be about the stories. It can be about more than just the actual product that you're selling, right? Marina, sorry, I cut you there.
Sorry, go ahead.
You were saying something.
No, all good. I was looking into the chat because there was a question popping up and I felt that this might be also relevant exactly on this point. So what if customers are not so much digitally savvy? And I felt that this exactly goes in the direction or is directed to me. Because if I told you that in Germany alone, the owners of restaurants, 50% of the restaurant owners do not have their own website. I can tell you there is no way that they can be found. Why? Because you all know that in the moments that you are on the go or in the moments that you are hungry, you want to find someone nearby. And we know that on Google, there was a very strong increase in searches when people search for someone nearby. So those businesses have no chance to do so. And one of the things, and I know I'm now speaking for a big corporation, while you might not have all the resources, but one of the things that we're doing is help customers to digitize, to be more digital themselves, because in case of Metro, if the customers are more digital, they might be more efficient, hence they would buy more from us. So the calculation is very simple. In the case that customers are not digitally savvy, I think I would partially disagree because I would differentiate. And this is the same as with the kids, and I have two, so hence I can be judgmental on that. One part is the consumption part. And here I would bet that in terms of the consumption, customers are savvy. But in terms of using the medium digital or different media to, I don't know, update your CV on LinkedIn or to book a travel or to do something that is more complex, this is a different story. So I think in terms of the consumption, it's just about finding the right moment and the right content that would attract the customer within their consumption time. Ruchi, feel free to disagree. It's an open panel.
No, I'm smiling because I remember a moment from my research. So I was talking to a very young girl. She was early 20s, and we were researching her for, about one of the healthcare applications we were about to build. And I was asking her, I said, so what do you think about digital? So she said, hey, I don't like technology. Well, that doesn't even make sense. She was a young girl and I was surprised. I said, okay, can I just see your phone? And when I saw her phone, she had all the Snapchats and all those applications. But imagine, she did not think that was digital. She also felt that, oh, that's just way of being, right? So knowingly, unknowingly, a large part of customers today actually are using digital. They might not actually know it.
They might not label themselves as
might not label themselves. They might say, I don't understand technology. It's too much to deal with. So again, I'm not disputing the fact that there are people who are not digitally savvy still. Absolutely they are. And you definitely have to go after them as well and slowly, gradually, meaningfully bring them to a platform where they feel comfortable. They don't feel threatened. They don't feel out of place. Absolutely. But just giving you a very interesting example of this lady, this girl I spoke to, people often don't know. So when you conduct this research, and coming back to the research point, so there is always, and I like to see that, right? There's a say and do gap. So what people say and what people do. So they say that, oh, I don't get it, but what they do is different. So when you're talking to your customers, stay curious, observe, and look for any of these gaps if they exist. And that could be an aha moment. That could be a sparking insight for you to think
So
about.
going back to the example in textile and Indian apparel you gave us, that in normal day-to-day life, they're not going to come to you and say that I want to understand the history of this fabric. I want to understand more about Indian textiles. I want to understand the origin, right? I want to know more about the artisans. We've got a member who runs Looms of Ladakh, right? So she's got a brilliant story around artisans from Ladakh. But a customer is not going to come and tell you that. That's one of those things that is not said but is done, that they will engage with, right?
Absolutely. In fact, another example I give you, I was researching for a furniture brand, and I was visiting people's houses to see how they live, like what do they like in their houses and what do they enjoy. And I was in this house, very beautiful house, and this very beautiful wall, colorful wall with all the Bali artifacts. And I was asking this lady, I said, hey, tell me about this. And she said, hey, I took a trip with my family last year to Bali. All of those moments were very special to me. And this wall is dedicated. So whenever I look at this wall, I go back in time. Okay. And I remember those moments. Now imagine, what does it mean for a furniture brand? So furniture brand, it means that memories, moments, collecting those memories, bringing them back to your house, that bonding between the family, doing this together, it's an insight. And what can furniture brands do about it? How can they market? How can they create products around this insight? Just to give you an example of how understanding your context of your customers and, and finding what role, what you want to play in their lives meaningfully is another just lens to look at it.
Amazing. So Marina, just before we move on to, our detailed framework, any examples from the hospitality space? Because we've, 2020 and 2021 have led to the birth of a lot of homegrown businesses around baking, around healthy eating, around food as a product, right? So have you seen a similar scenario where you have a said versus, done, say versus do difference in that space? Someone who's a baker, someone who's running a single stop restaurant.
Yeah, we could experience that it was extremely hard for the customers who were not initially digitized, so didn't have the digitized process to adopt to the new normal. When it comes to, even if you could offer the pickup service, the ones who were offering the pickup service were not able to get it delivered. So you needed to have a very strong loyal customer base, and I experienced this also in person, that I was willing to do this extra stretch because I wanted to support that business in hard times to go and pick up. And you could obviously see, and this is the resource repository actually that the smaller companies do not have versus the bigger ones, that the chains were obviously the winners because they had the access to the resources. And this is exactly what was Metro trying over the years to build, how you can improve the digital infrastructure of the customers for them to be easily connected to our ordering platform that they can use from us in a much cheaper way, not 25% of the paycheck, but on a monthly base for a fixed fee. And also, this was less related to COVID, but if they understand properly the profitability of their business, and ideally per dish, and we understand properly their share of wallet with us, we're able to help them to become more efficient, hence they could sell more. And this is one of the ways we were helping them. But clearly the digitally mature businesses, not the ones that are just consuming social media, but the ones that understand that you need to adopt your process, these are the ones that had better chances to overcome COVID times.
So the equivalent of what metros in Europe would be marketplaces. So a lot of our members would be selling, say, on an Amazon, or might be trying to tie up with other marketplaces like a Flipkart, etc. And how do you pick that up and build that into the journey? So you have your reach channels, and then you have your conversion channels, right? Cool. So I'm going to quickly move on to our race framework. So before I hand it over to Marina and then to Ruchi to walk us through this, what we've covered so far, just to recap. Who is our target audience? Who do we want to speak to? Therefore, who's our customer, right? And secondly, what is their life like, right? A day in their life, and therefore, what channels figure in that journey for them, right? We've covered scenarios in terms of content. We've covered scenarios in terms of engagement. But in terms of structuring our strategy, in terms of structuring our digital marketing, this is a go-to framework that Marina recommended that we walk through. And we'll build this back, connect this back to personas. We will connect this back to customer journeys. But Marina, over to you to walk us through the race framework.
Thank you. In the end, this comes across to me, and I use this to run and set up the first actually KPI and measurement framework for Metro to upskill and coach the people in our organization what it means actually to do marketing, especially to do marketing in digital. Because if you are doing marketing in digital, you can measure almost everything, right? But before you can talk about conversions and those likes and all the metrics behind, it's important for the people to zoom out and to understand why I'm doing that. And well, it's relatively easy because it actually shows you the funnel that you need to create a pipeline of your potential customers or leads by reaching them out with the topics that might be of value for them, but you would also figure out on the way what is important for them on the way out. So you would probably, if you were to run an educational session on, I don't know, on the skincare, or on the skincare, whatever this might be, on YouTube, you would be able to attract the people. You might probably not convert them directly to buy from your business because you need to prove your reputation, but you're creating a pipeline of the customers. And then you expect them to do something, which is always different from the business. If you look from an automotive industry perspective, the test drive is the conversion for them to have the first hook with the customer and then take the customer in. You need to act for them to act. So you would probably in the automotive industry want them to come to your platform to visit your platform or website. And then you need to convert to whatever action would be. And if it's about visiting your restaurant page, or when it's about subscribing to your to have an appointment for the facial treatment, I'll stay in this area. This is where you're in the moment of the conversion. So you probably don't go on YouTube to attract the people to directly convert to a facial treatment. You create a pipeline, you collect them, and you need to have your website or an app or whatever you might have as your relevant touch point for the customer to get the hook and convert them to the action. And then we're going to the engagement area in the funnel, because then you are going into the retention with the customer. We are entering a bit the CRM space, how you build the relationship with the customer, how do you make sure that you drive retention, the loyalty, so that they talk about you, that you constantly stay in that funnel, because it's obviously easier to keep the customer than to attract the one and create this high reach. I hope I was not too fast, and I think, Ruchi, you would be able to, to take it up.
No, this is a great walkthrough. I mean, this is very helpful actually. And this funnel is interesting, right? So customers will enter from all the places. So funnels are a great framework to kind of look at how the customers are flowing from point A to point B, where you want them to get and then have a relationship. But also, I mean, you'll agree with me that they will entry from all ends. So the entry points are like numerous. So how do you design the journeys which we saw earlier, right? Those journeys and orchestrate those journeys. So wherever they're entering from, they get the right experience which they're looking for in that moment. I think Marina made a point earlier as well about moments, right? So in that very moment, if they're wanting to engage with you, if they want to act on a certain service which you have, it could be a service around the jewelry, any healthcare service, any fashion service you have. So wherever they enter, your journey should be able to understand that's the context it's entering in and orchestrate that experience for them.
Got it. So I'm just going to position one offline scenario to you, because we've been talking about digital, but a lot of going back to my favorite industry for the day, which is apparel, okay, fashion and lifestyle. I know that a lot of our members participate in exhibitions, right? So if, for example, I've taken physical space in an exhibition, right? How do I connect this offline to the online? So it'll hit the reach stage, Marina, right? You are building that pipeline. You've taken physical space. You've taken your brand out there. You've taken your product out there. And that customer walks into my little booth and looks at the products and then goes away. They haven't made a purchase. They haven't. So just using this as a brainstorming session, how do we convert them from that offline physical engagement to a digital engagement and get them into the funnel, linear or multiple sort of journeys, either way? Marina, I'll give that to you first.
Okay, good. We're entering a bit the dimension of the so-called multi-touch point, multi-channel, omni-channel, whatever you call it. In the end, it's about how do you attract the customers so that they keep coming back. Well, typically, so one of the hook that I can spontaneously think of is giving kind of a for your next purchase kind of coupon to bring them back. So you basically go directly into the funnel of within the retention and you say, you know what, looks like today there was nothing for you, but if you come next time, this is the way to come back. This is basically you're converting prospect into the lead or the lead into the prospect, whatever you call it. But this is about creating leads and connecting the physical to the digital space. You can also offer, if there is a newsletter I could subscribe to, there is a way, or join my Facebook group. So there is a way to connect one channel to another. It's not the easiest one, I have to say. That's why the focus on the retention is the cheaper one, or less or more effortless. Let me put it like this.
Ruchi, any scenarios that come to mind? I know we're getting into solutioning and we're getting into the tactics.
It's a good discussion. Yeah, it's just like your thought bubbles around, right? So it's good. So you see somebody walks into your exhibition, right? So you can, the different things. So one is, of course, I will lean into, one is, of course, Marina, you said incentivize, right? So there's this whole psychology principle around reciprocity. So you give something first, and then people feel that they owe that to you in some way. So you've given them maybe in the next purchase some kind of incentive, and they feel that, yes, I should go and try that brand. That's a great technique. I think it works amazingly. The other ways is to use that moment to establish a relationship and use digital to give them the experience deep dives, the walkthroughs, make them interact with their digital touch points. It could be through QR codes, it could be through walkthroughs, it could be through just, kind of engaging with it. It could be a gamified version too. So you actually gamify a small piece of, service from your space and make them interact with your brand, but make them interact with your brand in that physical space. And when they start interacting with your brand, they would leave information and how you can stay in touch. And that's again another hook you can kind of create. And so, yeah, so these are a couple of thoughts where you can actually make it kind of bridge that gap between the chasm, right? Called the chasm. So from physical to digital, it just takes time. But with this whole experiential views to touch and feel your product, to sign up online, to engage with your service or product, and also to kind of establish a relationship.
Get them to engage with the digital channel in that moment through a QR code. It's not very complicated to print out a QR code and place a 10 card, right? Yeah. That QR code will lead to either a social media handle, or it will lead to a website or a Shopify store. If I know some of our members have gone ahead and opened up Shopify stores as well. So connect the dots in that moment.
Yeah, but there's a good question on the chat, and I think there are two, but I'll answer the second one first. How can one leverage digital in a B2B space? where you don't want explosive customer ad, but rather gradual high quality customer? It's a beautiful question. In fact, I was thinking about it before this session. So let's talk about B2B too, right? So B2B is catching up to a lot of B2C expectations. So if you go to a B2B customer today, they're not expecting you to just transactionally engage with them. They are kind of, because they are living, they're also a customer. Imagine you are a B2B, you might be a B2B client, but you're end of the day also a customer for somebody else. So they are trying to look for parallels in the B2B world. Having said that, you're right. You have to draw some boundaries in the B2B space. So in this space, in the B2B space, you really have to segment your customer very tightly. Say, this is this segment, what kind of a B2B client is this? What value are they looking for in this relationship? You cannot go all out with campaigning because they will not help. But with that target tight segmentation and understanding of their specific needs for that business type, and tailoring your campaign. In fact, in one of my previous organizations, we used to call it opportunity-centric campaigns or client-centric campaigns. So very specific marketing campaign, either for that specific segment, and it's a common problem and a common need, or for a specific B2B client, which you think you need to do something very special to make a difference in their business. So you have to go even more sharper. With customers, you still have room for experimentation and play, right? Because customers are open for that. With B2B, because the kind of background and the context is different, your focus on the segmentation has to be sharper, and your understanding of their core business needs of how they want to engage with you has to be very, very sharp, so that
so
you
going
can
back to our initial discussion, our personas for a B2B business where I'm either offering consulting or I'm offering services needs to be much more sharper. So Marina, switching it back to you, B2B, that's your space, right?
Indeed. Indeed, although obviously Metro is B2B and B2C, this makes our life
You're riding
slightly
the chasm on B2B and B2C.
Yeah, which we actually also reflected in the huge change that we did in our data model. We used to talk customer, and then people were attached to this one, customer meaning a restaurant or a business owner. But in the end, we changed it towards person, and then business is attached to the person, because the person can have multiple businesses. And in the end, we're talking to the person, which also leads me to the point that B2B and the persons behind a certain function, being a B2B customer, also consume different media, being B2C. They might not be in their B2B role in that space. For example, if you're selling cars and you are targeting a fleet manager who is representing a B2B company, and that moment he might be just a dad of 2 kids surfing on a football game site. It is like it is. And then also one other aspect of this, that the life cycle for decision making within the B2B area is much more longer than in the B2C. We're seeing this also with Metro, that you might have a chef running the restaurant, but the business owner is someone different. Or in a bigger hotel chain, the decision maker, you have even a so-called, if we think of marketing constellation concept, buying center, you have influencers, you have decision makers. And the question is, who are you targeting in that moment, so that the cycle, the time period from the first touch point in the journey until the very end has lots of interruptions. So it means you need to bring more patience into that and need to address different needs on the journey, and not to be discouraged.
So this brings me to LinkedIn, because you said that I'm a dad who's running a business, but when I'm with my kids, I'm a different person. When I'm on, say, for example, LinkedIn, I'm a different person. So to Madhulika's question on B2B, your persona on LinkedIn, your profile on LinkedIn of your target customer will be very different to who that person is, say, on an Instagram or a Facebook, right? Therefore, different content.
Correct, and different context. I think this is also important. If you look at me, I'm a certain decision maker when it comes to the digital industry. And if there is a company that is selling software and tries to target me, this would be in the context of targeting me. But in the real life, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and you could still target me with this content that might be relevant for me, regardless which role I'm currently living up to.
But possibly wrong time, wrong place.
Could happen.
That's a great point you're making, in fact, so the same person, right? These personas are very interesting, right? So the same person will show different behaviors, different expectations and goals in a different context. It's the same. So Tom, the decision maker, okay? Now, Tom, the decision maker, when he's at work making decisions, they'll be different set. But Tom, the father, will be different, the same person. So you realize that the same person can actually play different roles in different contexts. And hence these personas are not tied to people. It's tied to their context and their behaviors, just to give you that flavor. Very interesting point you've made, Marina. Yeah.
This actually, so I'm just conscious of time. I'm going to do a quick recap of what I've understood from Ruchi. You want to say something?
There's just one question. This is one question I'm seeing here. I'm very tempted to answer that because it's before Madhulika's. I think it's Kasturi's question. For research, should one do it themselves or should you engage professionals? Great question, actually. And that's a dilemma, right? But I would always say if you are beginning in your journey, in your business journey, you can always start yourself. You don't have to invest too much because when professionals and all involved, they go much deeper and they help you understand spaces where you haven't been. So initially, sometime you can absolutely wear the hat of a curious researcher, go on the field, interact with your customer, get some initial feedback and refine that. And as you start refining your hypothesis and your understanding of your customer, there will be a moment where you might want to kind of dabble with, kind of double check with some professionals. That's fine. But you can absolutely do that today with your lean research, and you're curious again, just be with curiosity and, the willingness to look at your customer's world with open eyes. You can start the magic from there. And then, of course, eventually you can get professional.
So what you're saying is it's not as complicated as all of those million articles that are available. It's not as complicated as some of the sample assets, which will be available to everyone on the LinkedIn group after this session. But I'm just going to quickly recap this RACE framework because, Marina, thank you for recommending that we look at this, because this is essentially providing us a framework to how to utilize our time with digital dialogues through the year. So you've got step number 1, which is the planning phase, which is where the personas come into the picture, the customer journeys to whatever degree, whatever resources we have available, that happens, right? And therefore the branded content, whether it is a B2B scenario or a B2C scenario, what kind of content should I be investing time in, investing effort in? For everyone who asked questions around Canva, around product image content, around just branded content itself, we will be doing a deep dive on content marketing and influencer marketing. Step number 2 is reach. So this is where you go back to the journey and the personas. Where is my customer spending time? What is the most relevant channel? We do not have infinite budgets. Therefore, pick and choose your channels depending upon the linear or the multi-channel or the omni-channel, whatever term, right? Journey. So this is where you pick and choose, and you add calls to action. You add conversion points that make it measurable. So it could be a QR code, or it could be the vouchers that Marina suggested. And then the act part is where you bring them into your ecosystem, your channel, get them to follow, get them to engage, get them to like, visit the website. E-commerce is where we will get deeper into commerce, where that actual conversion moment to purchase is happening. This may be online, this may be offline, but again, knowing that you have that data to go back to, you have that information of the customer to go back to understand them better. And that takes us to step number 5, which is engage. Marina, is that a good summary to wrap up the discussion?
I couldn't have wished for a better one.
Cool. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you so much for taking out an hour in the middle of the day. And to everyone else who's joined the call, I'm just going to hand it over quickly to Zia. Zia, please take this discussion home for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gurleen, and thank you so much to both of you for this insightful session and for taking the time to address us. We have learned so much today. I especially enjoyed learning about the marrying of offline and online. I think that was very valuable advice because I know that's very hard to do. I also want to thank IWN, CII, and the Secretariat for all their help and support. And last but not least, I want to say a special thank you to Gurleen and the digital literacy team for their invaluable support. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Zia. Thanks, Marina. Thanks, Ruchi, Divya.
Same to you.